What's up, you guys? We actually have another new mini series coming for you guys. So basically, previously we have showed you guys how to twin turbo swap an NA300ZX. Well, today we're going to continue with this theme, and we're actually going to be starting to boost this NA300ZX here, which is Matt's, which is actually one of you guys that you have found me here through the channel, and he has sent me his car to get an NATT swap. So basically, he's been getting busy accumulating some parts for us here to get started. And well, here's pretty much all of our stock stuff that I've had sitting back with, a couple other exceptions like our ECU that's chipped. And he's went ahead and grabbed everything else that we need. We've got some turbos on the way and a few other odds and ends like injectors. We got us a new flywheel, Grady boost controller, master hose set, a wiring harness, a master gasket kit, and a timing belt kit. So this Z is pretty much getting everything done to it. All new gaskets, fully resealed, just like we did Josh's car, except we're gonna add a little bit more power to this. Well, we're gonna be converting this car to E85, and there's a handful of videos that I kind of have planned that we can go over with this car, I should say. And one of them is how to use NA AC lines on a twin turbo car or twin turbo swap. Not only is that something you guys really wanna know, but that's really gonna benefit me because I have a bunch of these swaps myself. Two, I can't say it's a full video in itself, but we are changing a wiring harness. So if you guys have any questions about how to do that, firewall stuff, etc., stay tuned and we will go over that. The next video idea is actually an upgraded fuel pump video, or fuel pump wiring, all of that. I did two versions of this pretty much when I first started YouTubing. We really didn't have it figured out back then. Not that we do now, but we're much better, especially with articulation. We're gonna be putting a Walbro 485 kit in here. And we've actually got a Grady boost controller install and how to set up and test or use video coming with that new boost controller. So here, before we get started, we're actually gonna go over about everything that you need to get your car boosted, and this can equate to under $3,000 if you do it right. For about a 400 horsepower build, you want to go to about Nismo 740 or AUS 750cc injectors on E85, and you also want to get larger exhaust and intercoolers. The rest of this is all pretty much stock. We don't have here pictured as turbo lines, none of that. We're getting all that brand new that still hasn't came in yet. But you'll have your intercoolers, you have two of them, and I recommend getting the long bracket that bolts to your actual frame rail. It should be the one that bolts here and here. This one is not as necessary. You have two elbows for the inside, and you have two longer ones for the wheel well. You also have four intercooler pipes themselves that each of these hook up to here, and then you have these recirculation valves that bolt to the intercooler pipes that then hook up to these pipes over here that go underneath your headlight. The differences between NA and TT, definitely a different size. If you're going blow off valves, you can block these off on the NA pipes and not have to use these. But for factory recirculation valves, you need these. You'll need exhaust manifolds to bolt your turbos onto. These are JDM down pipes, so these bolt onto the turbo and they still use the NA test pipe. So you don't have to buy twin turbo down pipes and twin turbo test pipes. Since the EPA is cracking down on everyone, it's really hard to get them, and if you do, they're very expensive. So this is like the factory way to do it, because that's how it came in the motherland. Since we're going to run bigger injectors and whatnot, we need to have an ECU that is chipped and socketed so we can accept an EPROM tune to put into it. If you're going standalone and doing all that, great, that's the way to go. But we don't usually have standalone money over here, and we haven't taken that venture yet to really know what we're doing to offer that to customers. So here we've had an ECU that has a daughter board installed, so we can get a chip tune installed for our specific setup. I always go to Z-Shack for all of my chip tunes. They know what they're doing, they know what they're talking about, and they've done nothing but be great to me. I also completely forgot to mention our accordion pipes over here. These are what hook up to those pipes on the turbo that also connect here to these. But also, if you're upgrading, you usually need to upgrade your clutch, and in turn, you need to upgrade your flywheel. There's very few options out there for an NA clutch that's really affordable, and it's honestly kind of cheaper just to go twin turbo sometimes. We actually have a JWT 400 torque rating clutch in this, so we're going to use that with an NA flywheel. If you're using a twin turbo flywheel on an NA transmission, you're going to need to grind the bell housing down a little bit. We'll show you guys that. when we get to all this, I'll just kind of do an example. We're not actually doing that, but in turn, you're gonna need a shim for your starter because this is the difference in the flywheel. So you need the starter to stick out to make up for the size of that ring gear. Now, not only do I recommend doing your full timing kit, your wiring harness, gaskets, all that stuff, this is one of the biggest things you're gonna need, and it's one of the best ones on the market. This is a Greddy boost controller. This is so you can control your boost, you can keep it down and keep it safe, and in turn, not blow your engine. One of the biggest parts here, you can use your NA pan if you're handy with a welder, and you can weld some drain bungs on here, but you need a twin turbo oil pan, and these things are like 500 bucks new now, and it's getting bad. That's why I say welding your NA is a viable option. Now, we don't have our fuel injectors, we don't have our fuel pump. I recommend running a Walbro 485. May not be necessary on stock turbos. You may be able to get away with the 255, but 485 is plenty, and it's gonna be good enough for when you do upgrades and you wanna start making a little bit more power. As far as exhaust goes, I always recommend 2.5-inch test pipes if you can get them. 3-inch downpipes and all that, ideal, but not everyone's got that budget. You're gonna make the most efficient power, especially if you have full breathers and whatnot. But again, this build, we're trying to keep it more on the esque of cheaper and proper. Now, oil coolers, I think, are optional, as well as the TT oil tree, especially if you're not running an oil cooler. If you can't find a twin turbo oil tree, you can get a sandwich plate and run a feed fitting for your oil cooler that then goes back to the drain on your oil pan. Twin turbo oil trees are getting really pricey, so that's kind of the way you can get around that with not having to spend as much money. And again, for your clutch, you're gonna go with a clutch for the power you're kind of going for. Do a little bit of research on what to expect, but usually don't go no more than what your turbos can handle is a decent rule of thumb. I think that pretty much sums it up. If there's anything else you guys want to know, just stay tuned with this series. We're actually going fully in depth with this series of pretty much how to do everything nut and bolt. We're going to show it and give an in detail series for you guys, because I'd be getting a lot of questions. Nothing on you guys at all. Ask by all means, but it's just hard for me to keep up with all the questions sometimes. So I want to put a nice little thorough write-up on this out there for you guys. So back to the Z. Let's pop the hood and see what the Z's looking like under the hood. Sorry for rambling so long. I'm super excited to get working here on Matt's car. We'll just give you guys a little bit of a representation of what this thing looks like before we get to it. So, you know, maybe I can reference this back once we're finished. Get a nice before and after. Looks like we got us a little coolant leak, but not only do we have just all this little grime and stuff, we're gonna go and clean up absolutely everything and get this thing nice and spiffed up. Let's go ahead and get to work on the Z. I think our first priority is let's remove the nose panel so we can actually remove the bumper, and then we can just kind of gut out our intake system. And for those of you guys who don't know, these nose panel bolts here on the 1990 are actually shouldered. Guess we get to start making another parts pile. Don't lose a bolt like me. Is that a JDM? What? Is this a JDM turn signal here? Wasn't expecting that. I was under the impression they didn't really use the bracket, but I guess they did. They just did it in their own little way. I do want to bring some clarity to this. In a whole, the bumper is way hard to show you where everything's at when it's fully mounted. And if you have a fully mounted bumper, I'm sorry, but it's going to be a tough time. So the stock bumper has like 3 bolts right here in the front fascia where it has that mustache. You've got these up here for your bumper support bar. These 2 on the fender. These are nuts behind your turn signal. You'll have this screw right here. That's an absolute pain. This one back here. And other than your couple fender liner bolts to peel out of the way, you'll have 1 bolt right here to separate this bracket that's bolted to the bumper to pull it off. Not to mention you're gonna have a bunch underneath on that lip of the bumper going along here where your splash shield, the OEM splash shield, bolts to. We've only got a couple here on these quarter fender liner pieces. We don't have the full front air duct. Now I think next step, we're gonna start removing all of our Airbox stuff or just Airbox related stuff. I know we're not going to be able to get intercooler piping and all that jazz on with all this still in, because we have to pull the NA evaporator core, or AC condenser, not evap core, my fault. So basically we won't be able to run the pipes in between the frame rail and the radiator over here. This is a stock NA system and it's got a bunch of stuff that it does not need. There we go. Say that's a first. So we have these pipes over here that actually connect to the stock airbox, and that's where the stock airbox draws air up through the filter, through the MAF, and then into both sides. Basically, it's all routed, so you have these little collection pipes that any moisture or dirt that comes in falls and gets collected down here, so it doesn't make its way into the intake. Except we're gonna have to pull these out because we're gonna have intercoolers right here, we're gonna have pipes, and there's just gonna be a whole bunch of stuff going on. Plus, we're gonna delete this carbon canister while we're in here. With that being said, let's disconnect these fog lights, and I actually think we're gonna pull this crash bar off just so we have a little bit more room to look. Well, that gave me a whole lot more trouble than I've ever had in the past, but needless to say, it's now off. Now this gives us a little bit more access to these intake pipes here. So we've got this little 10 mil right here that holds this hard pipe under the headlight. And we're also going to dismount this debris collector. Just disconnect the hoses, hold them. Well, I guess that works. That's kind of the issue with being out here in the literal 1 degree temperature outside. It broke. All this plastic is insanely brittle. So let's pull this one back here off too. Now let's see how much dirt we got. Ooh, yeah. See, it's doing its job. Ooh, there's all the dry stuff. And trash. Let's remove this piece by removing this 10 mil up here. Okay, just break it. A little crusty. You can kind of bend this downwards and slide it out. And that is technically your intake pickup. Now this other bolt for the under the headlight pipe is a little tricky. You actually need to loosen the lower one so this top one, or this whole mount, will pivot. And you still need to disconnect it from the pipe itself. We went ahead and we disconnected the carbon canister with this bolt right here. Ratcheting 10 mil helps out. Where we can lower the carbon canister enough that we can actually get onto this bolt right here. Since we have zero use for this thing, we're just going to chop all of our lines with the razor blade. Once we get our 3 hoses cut, we should be able to pry this back and yank her out. Now we can access that bolt. We should be able to pull this out. This has to be twisted inwards to come out. I guess we can partially aid in that. And then you got a 2-wire connector. AC condenser fan out. And once you have this bracket off of this pipe and this bracket over here disconnected, to remove it, watch out for your AC condenser. Put a piece of cardboard here if you don't trust yourself. Pull it towards the condenser while twisting outwards to pull this side over here out and around that lip, or opening, just kind of wiggle it back and forth, get it started. Back here you can see we're out of the hole. So again, with just a little bit of wiggle and persuasion, slide out your pipe. This side, on the other hand, you're going to have to disconnect or remove some of this to bend it out the way. Now we can remove the carbon canister hard lines and the bracket. Just remove that line right up there from the frame rail. Like so. Now the canister is removed and deleted. So now to remove your hard lines, there's actually one more bolt. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to remove them carbon canister hard lines until we pull our radiator out, so we can clear up some of the area over here. We've now got the car up on blocks so we can get under it and start to begin to draining our radiator. So as I was lifting this car up, I discovered he has one of the aluminum undershrouds. So we have to pull that off before we can drain this, or it's just going to go everywhere and fill up that shroud. I'm sure a lot of your guys' Z's probably have all these undershroud pieces. I'm sorry I didn't really document that. We don't have any here. Usually I don't either. They're always broken or someone just took them off and didn't put them back. So I apologize for not being able to go over that, and I hope you guys can figure that out. Feel free to ask me in the comments if you get stuck. For this undershroud, it appears got it kind of bolted here. I think there's supposed to be one in the middle There's another one over here. So thankfully it's not on too crazy. We're gonna have to find something to put in between that. I don't like how that's tearing up his radiator support, at least scratching the paint off. Definitely looks like we've got an oil leak of some sort down here. Okay. Yeah, definitely got an oil leak. It's looking like we got a crank seal or something crying up here. Now that our hardware is threaded back in so we don't lose it, we're gonna get our drain pan down here, and this is where you crack your bleeder for your radiator. Thought I was gonna get away with not getting it on me. Psych. Now while we let it drain, you can pop this off, make the flow go a little bit faster. Appears we was already low on coolant. We can start to pull our radiator brackets off. Ooh, that's crusty. I'm gonna have to work this one in now. It's about 5 minutes of back and forth. We managed to get it off, or out. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to drill and tap this one out. We didn't have the best of luck. We're just gonna loosen these hoses up so we can crack them loose and kind of spin them free. Once you're ready to take the radiator out, right here, you want to take your lower fan shroud out, because there's no way you're gonna be able to slide this all out in place. So at the same time, you can lift your radiator hose out of its little retainer bracket. Once you get this out, the upper ones, they just slide into place. So pull downwards to remove your lower radiator shroud. Let's disconnect our hoses, twist it upwards, let's pull that overflow, disconnect it from the shroud. Let's just pull this off for now. We'll use it for the lower one to keep it from draining. I'm just gonna lift straight up on the radiator. I'm going to tuck the lower radiator hose in front of the fan, and you can move it up and past it and just pull it straight out. This way you can leave a little bit of fluid inside your radiator and not have to drain it all. It's safe to say we've had some belts rubbing. Now a lot of times when you go start messing with the motor, lifting it and doing whatever, and you tilt it, that's going to start draining out. My personal recommendation is just take your little top hose, put it on, and just put it straight up to where it doesn't drain out. Keep it clean. Now since we are going so in depth on this walkthrough, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. We're just going to finish out this nose end here, and next video we're going to get the full drivetrain out and up on the stand. So with that being said, let's just pull our intakes off. You've got two 8mm hose clamps up here and down here at the bottom. They should be oriented where there's a little rubber piece on the hose clamp to keep it from turning. We're not all that lucky. A lot of times they come off or the hose clamp's been replaced. Loosen all four of them up. And over here on the passenger side, you also have a PCV hose. You'll need pliers for that spring clamp and disconnect this vacuum line right here. The driver's side, you'll have the idle air control and the PCV. Disconnect both of those. There's also a vacuum hose right back here that will need disconnected. This thing's stuck. That's a testament to the temperature out here, I reckon. Oh, finally. Twist and pull. You got old stock hoses, pry it with your pliers. That's the best leverage. Twist, pull, and pop it. Now that we got the full front end torn down, at least everything that needs taken out, AC stuff's gonna wait till the motor's out. I think we're gonna wrap up the video here. I know I didn't really do as much as I usually do. I did do a lot of talking in the beginning, trying to explain to you guys, you know, what all you need and whatnot, maybe a couple little recommendations, but that's kind of gonna be how this series is. It's gonna be very, very in-depth. I'm gonna show you dang near every bolt that I take off, help you guys visualize a little bit better and be able to put the pen to the paper, so to speak. But if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Thank you for watching the whole video. And I'm super stoked to get Matt's car finished up, or at least started at that matter, and get him a little bit more power out of this thing and help him enjoy a little bit more. So let's be honest, all of us NA guys need a little bit more power. Again, thank you guys for watching, and until next time, we'll catch you then. Peace.